All right, so I lied. I lied to you yesterday. I wasn't going to show you any finish on this, but I decided I wanted to just go over a few things with you as I put this first coat on. Now, I've already kind of done a little touch-up sanding, and I've blown it off. I'm about to tack it off using tack cloths, which tack cloths are just like a cheesecloth that have like a stickiness to them. And this is what one of those packages would look like. I've got one that's already open, still has some life left in it. I don't know what you guys can see on camera there. And I wanted to talk about a few things with this. The first one is, as you guys know, I like to go and feel this. Well, I'm actually going to hit that real quick, a little 180. I can feel a few spots between seams where I can feel it. I'm not going to worry about it because when I initially did this, it was perfectly flat. So what wood is going to do, it's going to swell a little, and it's going to go ahead and retreat a little. So every once in a while you might feel a lip, you might come back a week later and it's perfectly smooth. You might come back later, you might feel a little bit. That's the nature of solid wood, which is a-okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's to be expected. And the other thing is like any little tiny voids I might have on here, we're talking a 64th of an inch, not even a 32nd of an inch. So what I forgot to mention, I meant to mention it to you guys yesterday. Let's say you go ahead, you put on as many coats as you want. And as I mentioned, we're going to use the wipe-on polyurethane, which is right here. I like this product here. It's a Minwax wipe-on. This is the thinner-based product. I like to put one coat on, let it dry, put a second coat on. This stuff dries in 3 to 4 hours, depending on the temperature, so you can get 2 or 3 coats on in a day, no problem. Let's just say you do 2 coats in a day. You come back the third day, or excuse me, the second day, and you feel it, you look at it. At that point, if you wanted to put a sand on it, you can, but I'll usually put a third coat on without sanding between coats. By the third coat, then I'll sand. And when I do sand, I'll use a super fine. Sometimes I even like to use 4/0 steel wool. That's 4 zeros. Problem with the steel wool is it gives a really nice finish, but it's messy. So I like to go with like a 600 grit sandpaper, 400 at the minimum. And I tend to like to go with the grain, so I would go this way, but then here I'd probably go this way. It doesn't matter once you start putting the clear on so much. When you eventually get your, let's say you sanded your third coat, you put your fourth coat on, that's usually pretty good. Then, let's say you've had a few little voids that the finish didn't like fill. This is what you want. Wax. It's one of my favorite products. This one happens to be a mahogany color. They have them in walnut and everything else. Mahogany I find is pretty good for the walnut. Walnut's fine too. You always want to go with the darker color. I've used clear before, but I'll use clear on mahogany, or I'll use clear on maple, lighter woods, things like that, beech. Because my real finish, which I didn't mention to you yesterday, is get the wipe-on polyurethane on it, and then we get into the Karate Kid school of finish, right? I'll wax on, I'll wax off. So I like to put a coat of this on and then buff it out by hand. The beauty of the wax is it gives you, it's the only way to get a hand-rubbed look. So you'll get that. This is nice and solid, man. This is nice and solid. Also, I noticed that when I rotate this around on the floor, I can get it to tip a little. This is totally stable. It's not going to go anywhere. You'd really have to force this to lift it, to get that to fall over or anything. So we're good there. But let's say you have a little rock on the floor. You just do what you do in a restaurant. You stick something underneath the part that needs to be done. But the key to that is trim that down, whatever it is, so that when you look down at the foot, you don't see it sticking out. But that's very common because your floor, especially if you have a tile floor, or if you have a slab in your house and you've got like vinyl over the top of that, the odds of that being dead flat is pretty slim to none. So you can buy a brand new table at the store and put it in your house and you got a little wobble to it, just stick something underneath there. But again, just do it so that you don't see it. Doesn't matter. But yeah, so you do a wipe on with the wax. and then you buff that out. And the beauty of that is, man, water beads up on it, and it's an extra protective coating on top of the clear finish that you've put on, and it prolongs that finish. And all of my furniture has been finished that way. Now, another little thing here is I love these gloves from Harbor Freight. So let's just walk you guys through this right quick. I need to get a paint can opener. I use t-shirts for my finish, and my recommendation there is cut them up, rip them up, and then wash them. Put them in the dryer, try to get all the lint off. I could see this one has a little lint on it. Doesn't matter as much right now because these are the preliminary coats. But one of the things I'll do is, I already kind of blew it off, but I'll take this tack cloth here and I'll kind of get that on there, and this will kind of get some of the lint even off the rag. Nothing wrong with that at all. Usually, really the way I do it is I go ahead and tack things off, and then the stickiness gets on the gloves, and then I run the glove over the rag. So the reason I'm doing this top right now is I have it screwed in place. I will remove it for transport, but I'm going to go ahead and do this top, and then I'm going to lift it up. You can't see it right now on camera, but you will in a moment. I've got a thing on wheels here, a box that'll get me to a nice height, and I'll be able to do the base on it. And I might as well I'll run the camera while I'm doing it. This won't take that long, and it's going to look like $1,000,000 in the end. I can't put any more time into this. If this was, if I was charging 10 or 15 grand for this thing, I would go nuts with it. But I have to pull back a hair. I mean, all the hard work has been done. It's a beautiful piece of work, and you guys could do the math on the videos I've done and how much time. Just count the days, man, and imagine what that is. So I've already blown off the bottom, but I didn't tack that off. But I'll tack that off once I get it up on the little platform here. Just when you think you're done, keep wiping. You miss one little spot there. Again, not super important because you're going to put so many coats on it. And like I said, after the third coat or so, you are going to, now my hands are sticky, so I'll run them over this cloth a little bit. Try getting lint off there. Again, doesn't matter. Oh, I got sawdust on it. Like I said, you make your own out of some t-shirts and vacuum them off. It might seem slightly unimpressive when you first get it, Andrew, if you're watching this, because you might seem like slightly fuzzy. That's fine. So what I like to do is just kind of really rub this in. Fill all the pores. It'll have little mini air bubbles in it, which is fine because as it dries, they go away. You can see why I like this so much. It's pretty simple. All right, now most of the grain is going in this direction, so I'm going to take this thing here and go with the grain. And you know, you can experiment with this. You can't really, anything you do to this where you think, oh no, I screwed up, everything's repairable with sandpaper. Again, that's another one of the added benefits of solid wood. At this point, everything's easy to kind of tune up. It doesn't really matter anymore. The hard work's really in the design and milling all the parts and you know, getting it together. The finished part doesn't matter so much. Now I'm going to take this here. I'm going to try to get fancy. I'm going to lay this and pull it at the same time, just to kind of get this. Lift that. Once you get to your final coat on this, you can run it all in one direction, and this won't matter. Looking pretty good here. This looks pretty good. So that's the top. I'll give you guys a quick look at that. And then we're gonna, you can also, what I just did there, if you see the bubbles, if you want, you can kind of blow on them a little bit. They'll go away. But again, they're gonna kind of go away on their own. I might have mentioned the time I met Henry Winkler, the Fonz, and he was looking at artwork at an art gallery at Bergamot Station. And the funny thing was, I gotta find a clean place to put this for a minute. Let's put it up on here. Funny thing about that story is the artwork he was looking at was done by an ex-girlfriend of mine, and her name, what was her name? Melissa Sims. And she painted under another name. Something Peters, Amanda something, because she painted for paintings for Pier 1 and all this stuff you could buy, stuff you see in hotels and all that. But I used to do the finishes on her. I'm going to get another pair of gloves because I've got stuff on this table I got to move off. But I used to do the finish on her pieces with this same product. And I saw their art hanging there and went, oh man. I went over and looked at it, and I realized I did the finish on all those parts, and then I looked next to me, and there was Henry Winkler. That's pretty cool. All right, let's adjust this camera angle for you. I didn't even notice if there was glare on that, so I apologize. You guys see what's happening here. Looking pretty good. I'm going to place this up on here next. I got a little rock there, you see. Got some weight to it, as you would imagine. And this thing being on wheels, it's gonna fight me a little. Hope you guys find this entertaining. All right, there we go. Now I can push this back a ways here. You can tack off this base and put the rest of the finish. And then, yeah, so there's little places where I put little shims. There's a little spot here that's like a 64th of an inch where I didn't. But it doesn't matter because, as I was mentioning, you just put the paste wax on it. Force the paste wax into any little void that you find. Buff this out and you're golden. And I often do have this bad habit of pointing things out that are unimportant. You know, they're things that I see that don't matter. So I know that it's there. Boy, this really does look good. This is a nice vantage point as well because you can see how flat that top is. Now let's keep working here. All right. Pair of gloves. I'm leaving the products on the screen here so you guys can see them. Brie wax, the nitrate gloves. I did blow this off already. I didn't really tack it. Tacking is the most important part, I think. Don't be cheap on that. Buy tack cloths, and once they start changing color, you know, you're getting pretty close to needing to break out a new one. This one here is, again, still pretty good. When you take it out of the package, open it all the way up like this. It's all folded over to itself, and then you can bunch it up, and as you use it, take it apart again, let it fall open, shake that sucker open, pull it apart again, and then rebundle it another way, and you'll get more life out of these things. I don't see people doing that. I never see anybody talking about it. So, not that I spend that much time really watching a lot of other woodworkers. This is really going to pop, I'm telling you, once you start seeing the finish. I had to do some shims here that are funny because you can see little voids there, but again, no problem. You just put the paste wax in there, fills it up, looks like $1,000,000. Also, keep in mind, I'm right here. I'm this close. Typically, you're not looking at anything like that. You are looking at it from a foot away at the closest. And when you're doing something where there's a budget too, like I keep mentioning, you have to get to a point where you say to yourself, okay. And I've got the confidence knowing that I've been doing this for so long that I know it's a pretty damn good job, you know. You'd be shocked at how often people hear what I'm saying about something and they take it like I'm really, really criticizing myself. And then a lot of times they see the piece afterwards, they're like, dude, what's your problem? This is perfect. That's my other tip here. If you're not doing it flat, you just pour the finish right onto the rag in your hand and then just work this in. Now, when my client does the finish on this, he's going to be getting this in two pieces. There's going to be the base and the top. So he may choose to not put them together, but I clearly marked the top. I outlined the parts and I lettered each one, A, B, C, and D. So the screws will go right back in the same spot. I just used standard 1 5/8" screws. I pre-drilled, and anybody can figure this out. And of course, this is going to a pretty smart guy, so. I don't know that you really need to watch all of this. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tell you a story. I brought up Henry Winkler. I've told the story before. I did some videos on leather jackets. I might be doing more of those. I got to start selling stuff, guys. I'm thinking about doing some videos. I've actually sold a couple of my leather jackets because of the leather jacket videos I did. People offered me money for it. That happens from time to time. Somebody will watch one of my videos and then they'll say, hey man, would you sell that particular item? And sometimes I will. And because I'm, not wealthy, but I do own a lot of really cool stuff that is worth money. I've been kind of thinking about that lately, like, kind of showing off some cool stuff, doing videos on it and offering it for sale. Because it would help me out. You guys could help me out. You guys could end up with cool stuff, and it just makes the world a beautiful place. So here I am. I'm at the Bergamot station, and I realize I'm standing next to Henry Winkler. I was riding a Triumph. At that time, I think it was my Bonneville. I think this might have happened before I got T-boned on that one. That was a really bad motorcycle wreck. That wreck should have killed me. Well, most of my motorcycle accidents should have killed me. It's a motorcycle accident. When you get hit by cars and you're on a motorcycle, that's how that works. Anyhow, I had my Levi's on and my engineer boots, and I'm wearing one of my leather jackets, and there's the Fonz. And it was just so funny. He looks at me, he goes, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm great, man. How are you doing? I'm a huge fan." And right away I said to him, I said, "You're one of the reasons why I ride a Triumph." I mean, you know, him, Steve McQueen, of course my uncle. Well, actually my uncle had a Norton, but I grew up around it. A lot of British bikes. And I said to him, I said, "Is it true?" Because I had heard these rumors that Henry Winkler couldn't actually ride, and that they first put him on a Harley, but he couldn't kickstart it, and all of this. So I asked him straight up, and he said, "No, that's all true." He says, "I'm still afraid of motorcycles. I've never rode it." He said, "Even in the shots where it looks like I'm riding it, somebody just pushed it." And they captured a couple seconds of it just, you know, rolling, basically. And then he said to me, because this turns out this happens to be a people talk about this. I guess it's a rumor. They don't know if it's true. I didn't ask him this. He volunteered it on his own accord. But Henry Winkler told me that the motorcycle in Happy Days that the Fonz is on is the same bike. It was owned by Bud Edkins. Bud Edkins was a stuntman. He did all these things. Bud Edkins jumped the fence in The Great Escape, playing Steve McQueen. And he was told that that bike is the very same bike that Bud Edkins used. Henry Winkler himself told me this to my face. So that's all I have to go on. I mean, I got it directly from the horse's mouth, so to say. So that was pretty cool. Let me stop this for you and just keep working, and I'll get back to you in a minute. All right, looking pretty good. Little trick I like to do is I'll take this rag like this and this glove, and I'll peel this glove off. I'll pinch it and I'll twist it, squeeze it a little bit, get the air out. I'll take this glove, I'll do the same thing. Now, this rag is good to use for tomorrow. So if you were gonna, I don't intend on putting any more finish on this. This is enough for the client, and I just can't put any more time in on it. I just can't do it. It's been too much. It's just too much. The real bummer is, for me, it's not that so much, but I have to drive this thing to Arizona, so there's the cost of gas and everything. But the real bummer is, when we initially agreed to do all this, you know, I've got this house in Arizona. This guy lives in the next town, but my sister had this situation, so she moved into that house, and it's supposed to be temporary, and she's there with her adult son and her 9-year-old daughter. And so now if I go to Arizona, I don't have a place to stay. I can't even stay in my own house. So this is just where we're at. Like, when I drive this out to him, I got to run and drop it off and go. I got another errand to run up in another town up north for one of my other nieces. So I want to help her out. Let me give you a couple close-ups of this, point out the things that I notice. Just wanted to point out, I did have somebody say something to me on Instagram about the way that I did this top. By surrounding the field like that and wrapping it with the frame, and he's like, "Your glue joints are going to crack." I just want to point out that it's not the first time I've done this. It's not the first time I've done this. There's a coffee table in the house right now that I did over 20 years ago, exact same construction method, exactly the same, and it hasn't moved. It's been there over 20 years. No problems, no cracks, no nothing. The key is the butterflies in the corners, because that keeps everything from moving. And then there's a technique with the milling process, which you guys know if you were paying attention. The technique is take your time, mill it over the course of days or weeks or a month, like I did on this one, because it moves every time you mill it. And eventually you mill it to the point over that amount of time where you're going to take the movement out of it. It's just not going to move that much anymore. So, and harder woods move less than softer woods, and this walnut's pretty hard stuff. So we're in good shape with that. I don't anticipate any issues whatsoever. If you see a light spot like you see right here, sometimes that's just because maybe you had like a little glue on your finger that got on there. So all you have to do is just sand that out. Just take some 180, sand that out a little bit. But the thing is you don't really notice it so much. So that it doesn't need to be addressed at all. It's just something I happen to notice. I love the way that Purple Heart pops once you get some finish on it. And again, any little gap anywhere, just cram the paste wax into this and take a rag with like a little piece of wood or something that's sharp and drag it across there and then buff it out really good. And you'll fill all those little voids that might need to be filled. There might be some up here on one of these corners. You just never know. And yeah, man, this is looking pretty fancy. I don't think the camera does it justice. I don't think the lighting in here is very good. Your first coat is usually pretty unimpressive. I mean, it's great because you get a pop to it, you know, and you get to see what the grain is kind of doing. But once you start building the finish up, that's when things really start to really look impressive. Remember, I did the little bow, right? That's not a straight line. So the center bows out just a bit on all the straight edges on this here. I did this on purpose, just for a little visual interest, you know, soften things up a hair. So just having, you know, perfect straight lines, a square is pretty boring, right? So yeah. So Andrew, you should be really stoked with this. It really is a beautiful piece. This is the only one like it on the planet. Look at the fire in that grain. When this gets a few more coats and when the light hits it, it's going to pop so much. The entire planet, Earth. This is the only table like it right there. There is not another table like this table on the planet. It's the only one. What's that worth to you? You guys have a great day. Be good to one another, and I will catch you all in the next one.